My name is Yshall Tarlon, the chair of the Board of Directors, and what we have today is an interview with one of our board members, Yshall Davis, who is a community advocate who's worked in many positions. She is also known for dealing with voter registration issues. She's aware of the challenges that African-American parents deal with law enforcement in our community. And she also has worked a great deal in this whole area of Omaha movement and Omaha for race equity. I met her at one of the community forums we did at First United Methodist Churches some years ago. And I was very impressed with her commitment and tenacity and her ability to work with many of our grass tops and grassroots folks, and decided to invite her to come and do a program with us to talk about some of the things that she's working on, what she's doing, and so on. And I will start off by Yshall, welcome to Yshall's role. And again, part of our role is to deconstruct racism and bring forth the truth. A lot of people are not doing that. And I'm also going to ask her to share a little bit more as we get into it, a little bit more about yourself. So Yshall, can you say a little bit more about yourself before we get into the actual interview?
Sure. I want to thank you for having me come into Yshall's world. A little bit about myself. Born in Omaha, Nebraska. Was actually born in South Omaha, raised in North Omaha. As a teenager, I was big on basketball. Then I got into rap music. And pretty much my whole adult life, I spent rapping, recording rap music. I wrote all my own lyrics. I had a producer. I would pay to have I would order my own CDs so I could distribute them myself. So I was independent the whole time. And that's how I made a living, actually, off being an underground rap artist. Never made it to the mainstream, but excuse me, my rap was really focused on being conscious. You know, I kind of came up during the rap era where it was very conscious rap music, which preceded the, gangster rap. So I was cut, differently than a lot of the gangster rappers. So my thing has always been being vocal against injustices that, permeate through our entire community. I don't know where this cough came from, but excuse me.
Well, one thing I was going to ask, in the work that I've been involved in 45 years is help low-income families, individuals, and working class families. What are the challenges that you see facing our community that we should be mindful of in reversing the bleak conditions, and particularly, obviously, in the African-American low-income community?
I would say it's our understanding of power. I really don't think our people understand power, because if they did, they would understand that the powers that be, they have power over us. And that power that they have over us, they don't have any intentions on sharing that power to where we can say they have power with us. They only want to focus on power over. And if we sit back complacent with groups of people having power over us, that's going to always be a problem. When I say that we don't understand power, it's like some people are afraid of power. Maybe because they've seen the abuse of power, that they think power is a bad thing. But power is not necessarily a bad thing. Power is a good thing. It's just how you utilize power. And we need to understand our relationship to power. I see a lot of us, we're just too fearful of things. And that fear kind of paralyzes us on so many levels. If you're paralyzed, you can't move.
Right.
And that's where I think we are. We're paralyzed out here.
Right. Now, Yshall, part of your public and private advocacy is helping get rights for ex-prisoners or people who've been convicted of felons and having their rights restored. Why is this important to you particularly?
It's important to me in particular because I have a big brother who's a lifer, and he got life imprisonment when I was 12 years old, and I'm practically 50. And he's still incarcerated. So, I mean, just, doing time with him all these years, it's like, I see the injustice for what it is. And then if we want to go even deeper, the United States Constitution, when it was formed and created, I should say, it never included us, Ask the question again, because it seemed like I got a little sidetracked.
No, basically, you've been involved in dealing with people helping with rights for ex-prisoners or people who've been convicted felon and have their rights restored. Why is working in a criminal justice or reform system for people who are convicted of crimes important to you? Why do you do what you do?
Right, that's what I thought I heard. Because like with our original Constitution, it never meant for Black people to vote. You know, it never was designed to see us empowered or to exercise a lot of the rights that's in there. You know, they never wanted to see us bear arms. That Constitution, those forefathers, they didn't want to see that. They didn't want to see us assemble and have conscious conversations about getting free. You know, so most of the rights that are in the Constitution was never meant to be shared with Black men or women. That's why it was so late in the game when we even had the opportunity to even claim that we could exercise these same rights that people don't want to see us exercise.
Wow. You know, as you were saying that, I was reading a book, and I'm going to be doing a book review, Walter Brooks' book, and he talks about genocide and the Constitution and how there were so many hideous things that we don't know about that's not talking in our school system. And so one of the things we got to do is self-educate ourselves, because it's already these brainwashing plantation school systems are not going to do it. And particularly in Nebraska, you got a governor who's pushing Trumpite type policies and 3 candidates who don't want to deal with race and diversity in a healthy way. We got that. Another thing I was going to ask you is organizations such as the Very Institute of Justice outlined an excellent article titled The Unjust Burden, the disparate treatment of Black Americans in the criminal justice system. There are points I want to get your reaction that we're citing in particular. Why are African Americans overrepresented in the prison industrial complex from your vantage point, and particularly in Nebraska? We just heard Dr. Ryan Spahn say that Nebraska and Iowa has some of the highest percentage of incarceration rates of Blacks and whites, Black people, men and women, higher than some of those southern redneck racist states like Mississippi, Alabama, and Arkansas. So talk to me a little bit about just basically, why do you think we're overrepresented in prison in Nebraska and Iowa? And again, they don't have any administrators in key positions in Nebraska who are African Americans, which is also a joke.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. But I think it goes back to the founding of this country. A lot of people, you know, because they haven't educated themselves, they don't realize that Caucasians were the first indentured servants pretty much in this country. And my understanding of that is that it was easy if, like, say, a Caucasian so-called slave, servant, whatever, if he got away, he can go blocks down and say he got away and he took some of the person who was, you know, working him for free. He took his clothes. He get a couple of towns away. He could put them good clothes on and act like he's a man who owned property himself. You know what I'm saying? But with Blacks, we couldn't do that. So that's kind of what freed the Caucasians up to where they didn't have to do many more years as indentured servants. They were able to go free and become slave owners themselves. But again, Black people, we can't get free of the Caucasians because of the difference of our, you know, colors. It's too easy to identify us. You know, so I think what they've done is they pretty much recreated that system in mass incarceration. And the thing is, yeah, Caucasians, you know, just so we, you know, show that, you know, everybody got to uphold, you know, the law. We'll put some of y'all in jail. But really, this is for Black people. This is for people of color. Right. So therefore, to make it a facade to where it's like, no, it's just for criminals. It's not really just for criminals. It's really just for us. Right. And it's really this system that has worked for Caucasians, you know. A lot of people know they're the true criminals, but they put their criminality off on us and they sell that to themselves and others, and people buy into it, and everybody wants to say, oh, it's the Blacks who are the criminals. How is us the criminals and we don't have anything? We don't own anything. The criminals got wealth.
You know, as you mentioned that, look at the dual system, how the guy shot the young man in the head, and I also look in terms of the numbers. And even recently we had a white guy kill another white guy, and they let him out on bail. So it depends on who you got as a lawyer. Depends on if you got a county prosecutor who's favorable to white folks or the public pretender who does the same thing, because neither one of them have many Black people or African Americans overlooking some of the crap that they do. And you look at the data, it shows through reverse engineering that they have some issues against people who look like you and I. I was going to ask you a different question. Most folks don't talk about the high level racism, institutional factor dealing with the Trumpite law enforcement and the duality of treatment of people of color. Is there a conspiracy in the treatment of African Americans in Nebraska, and particularly in Omaha, since we have such a hard time in this racist city?
Of course. You know, when the Trumpites, when they be like, make America great again, what I actually hear is Make America to where Black people can't vote again. Make America to where Black people can't carry firearms again. Make America that type of America. This is what these people want. You know, that's what I like with the whole critical race theory. And I hear a lot of people say they don't like that title. I'm not a fan of the title either. However, I understand it, and I am a fan of what critical race theory is supposed to accomplish by, you know, sharing true history. And we just have to realize that a lot of these people that are in power, they love the work of their forefathers. And they say that this stuff is supposed to embarrass them and they don't want it to get out, but you uphold the same things. Like I said, why are we Black people in the same messed up predicament we were 400 years ago? Because all the Caucasians that's in power, they are emulating and trying to hold on to the same system that their forefathers put in place all those years ago. And that's what they're fighting for. And, you know, that's what they're upholding. White power, white purity. I mean, that's full-fledged today. And like I said, if things have changed so much, then why are the results so much the same, you know?
Well, the other thing that most people don't understand, the wealth that white people have is like 87% of the wealth, and African Americans only have 7%. And then if you look back at the GI Bill, I didn't know this so recently. I started reading Walter's book, where that basically the southern states were able to get the votes in to make that bill where you had to have states determine who got the GI Bill. So you had Black men and women, but mostly men coming from World War II who didn't get free education. They didn't get the home loans because those southern states wanted to keep them in that patronage or that kind of penal system where they had to work and do the new Jim Crow, where they throw them in jail if they didn't have a job. And again, some of those African-American soldiers, when they went to Europe, and some of those Europeans treated them halfway decent, they came back expecting it. And there were a number of lynchings of Black men in uniform. So, you know, them redneck racist saltines in the South, they can care less whether you've been in the military or not. And Malcolm has taught us, even if you get a PhD, they still gonna call you the N-word because that's ingrained in the mentality of the system. And again, I keep hearing these local yokels saying they don't want to be the students that feel embarrassed or shamed by their history. You can't ignore history, just like that law they just passed that you can't teach about genocide practices against Native Americans or enslavement of Africans, but you can talk about the Holocaust. Are you serious? How can I talk about the Holocaust when I'm talking about genocide in this country? Because the Holocaust didn't happen in the United States, it happened overseas. And not to say we're not concerned or we somewhat, but you got the Trinity, and we need to bring them all together because they can have the same impact. And even today, it's still unfortunate. I'm going to switch up and ask you a question that's different. I saw recently that you told a story about how the police department ran you up with a bogus situation and ultimately got a search warrant to invade your home. Can you give the viewer and eyes a little bit overview what happened with that transfer? Because when you told me that story, if I didn't know you, I thought you made it up. So how did that happen? Give us, viewers, a little bit of how that went down, because I think that was a fascinating story from our local Omaha Police Department, which prides itself on good community relations.
Well, the truth doesn't change, so it'll be easy to tell that story again. Yeah, my son had got pulled over in traffic in North Omaha. I was living actually in Northwest Omaha, and my son was living with me. And at the time, my son, he didn't have a driver's license, he didn't have a car. He's out with some of his friends, and he asked one of his friends if he could use his car to just go see this girl around the corner. So when he pulls out of the parking lot, I guess he had his headlights off. So by the time he get the car ready to go down the street, he turns the lights back on. But I guess the police were already watching the house and stuff like that. So they pulls him over before he can even, get down the street good. And supposedly it's because the headlights were out, and these headlights are on at this time. But they pulled him over, and whoever car it was had a little bit of what they call lean. Lean is this. It's legal medication that's prescribed to people, I guess, like with bronchitis and stuff. But if the prescription is not in your name, then it's illegal. Legal if it's to the person who was prescribed to, but illegal if somebody else has it. So that was in the car already. So my son basically like, it's not mine. So now, who is it? And, one thing about these kids in North Omaha, you can't be putting these young boys or girls in positions where you're basically making them snitch on other people. In our community, if you snitch on someone, I remember I was 17 years old, I got in trouble. At 17, I knew you cannot snitch on nobody because that is going to follow you the rest of your life. So, a lot of our youth don't want to snitch and stuff. We know why, because it's going to follow you for the rest of your life, whether you understand what you're doing or not. That stigma is going to follow you. And of course, so my son's not compliant. I'm not about to be he probably really don't know whose it is, but at the same time, I don't care who it is. I'm not telling you who it is. So they arrest him, charge him with it, even though this vehicle's not his. Nothing about this car belongs to him. And so they arrest him. And after they arrest him, they decide to come to where he lives. Now they want to come to my house to see if drugs are at my home. And, and me, as soon as they knocked, I made the mistake of saying, yeah, come on in, like, what's going on? What's going on? Because I know you're here for my son, because my daughters fortunately weren't having these problems. But I welcome in my house. It was a Sergeant Aaron Hansen, who's actually running for the sheriff's department right now. And he told me, he said, long story short, I'm like, why are you here? What's going on? What's going on? Oh, your son was arrested, woo, woo, woo. And, he had the lean or whatever. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, so why are you here though? If he's in jail, why are you here? We just want, normally in traffic investigations, if we find a little something in the car, it's just safe to assume there's more at the house. And I was like, well, there wouldn't be more here because this is my place. And I said, with me having a son that I know hangs with a little crowd that's rough around the edges, I said, I check my own home. He's not gonna have no drugs up in here. He's not gonna have no firearms up in here, because me and my daughters are here too. So no, he's not gonna have that type of stuff at my house. So they didn't take my word for it. And once I let them in the house, they was on the phone calling judges. I need a warrant. Once them judges said that warrant was on the way, they was like, I'm trying to sit here, ma'am. I'm trying to go to the restroom. I needed their permission to go to the restroom.
In your own house?
In my own. My mama needed permission to go to to the restroom. Everybody needed permission to move in the house at that point.
As you share that story, I heard the story from another reliable source than Harrison, and I've interacted with him in some of the meetings. He's gotten search warrants from judges in the middle of the night for stuff he had no business getting it from.
And he got reliable sources. 30 minutes. He got that search warrant in 30 minutes.
Yeah, see, these judges about as racist as some of these cops, and they just go and do stuff to Black folks and abridge our rights. That's when they keep those numbers up high for the cottage industry, and then they want to hide the numbers about what they're doing. But this guy's running for county sheriff, and he ain't even worked in the county government. Secondly, he ain't got no track record in the Black community doing some heavy stuff. Because at one point, I was sitting there watching from a distance, and I see how they operate. They run that quiet law and order and some of that dog whistle stuff in our community. And we got enough Negroes running around here endorsing and supporting some of these racist situations that go in our community. So yeah, it was unfortunate what you went through.
Those people who don't understand power, they like, oh, these are the powerful people. I'm on the powerful people side. Y'all powerless people. Yeah, I don't want to hear nothing y'all got to say. That's why I said we don't understand power.
Well, child welfare, juvenile justice, criminal justice, they all have one thing in common. They make money off our misery. And then now these clowns are going to talk about mental health. Hey, they're the one that caused mental health with 450 years of trauma, of racism. Now they don't want to talk about it and teach and help our kids overcome some of the degradation that we experience as a result of this bondage and this negativity. They need to be talking about reparations, if anything.
Hey, I agree with you. And then and how you talking about mental health when being a racist is a mental disorder in itself? How you talking about?
Some people would even argue that it's acquired. Some people would say it's socialized. Some people even argue it's genetic because it's lasts so long and kept us in Jump Street in the corner and stuff that we can't even deal with it. I was going to ask you a different kind of question about, it was shared that you have a loved one in prison. You talked about that a little bit. What is it like for you to have that occur? You talked about your older brother, and I assume you visited him. And actually, in fact, I saw a picture of you and him, I think on Facebook. So that's how I knew that you had a brother. First, I thought it was my significant other, but I wasn't sure. So I asked you, you told me it was your brother. And what is that like for you going through all these years? Because you talked briefly about it, but how does that feel? And particularly, he's in a situation where he should have long been out. I mean, like I say, they don't even give people that kind of time in prison when it shows that it doesn't do much after, because if they can give their white friends a limited time because they got a white judge, how come Black people can't get the same kind of love or respect? I'm not saying I'm not supporting any kind of negativity. I'm just saying I want equity.
Right. My thing, I'm gonna be honest with you and answer that question. As honest as I could possibly be, what that does to me is make me stay realistic in the fact that this country still views us as commodities. I mean, knowing that my brother is in prison for his whole life, it just makes me think back to the Root movies, when we used to watch Roots and stuff, and how they'll take a child, and start working them in a plantation at 5 years old. Then they'll work that child literally from 3 to the day that person has no breath in them. 3 to 90. You're going to be a slave your entire life. And that's what I see the penal system is. You're going to be my property. You're going to be my slave your entire life. And then like the slave codes and stuff like that, I feel like my brother was a victim of that. He did something, you know, again, they could have got him a year or two in jail, but because you make money off these people, because this is a very profitable system y'all have in place, why would I make money off him 2-3 years? I can make money off this man until he no longer has no breath in his body. And that's the reality of it is for me, that these lengthy penitentiary system is just saying, I have a system in place and it won't work if I don't have these bodies here.
Well, it keeps increasing. In Nebraska, you got people who are guards who are like sadists. I know that from people who were former guards. They said they needed mental health after they got out of doing that job. And then I see they get these increases. And then I heard the stuff that they do and get away with it, and how the judicial system support their white perspective and world over somebody who know that these people harassing and being somewhat like a sadist in prison. Again, I can't say that unless I knew some people who had stories to tell. And then I see some of the so-called inmates or returning citizens get out, and some of them as quiet as church mouses. They're afraid to say anything because they still so much fear in them that they won't speak out about some of the horrific conditions in Nebraska, especially Tecumseh and you know, the state pen. There's some stuff we should have cleaned up. And all I got to do is look at the European model and say that even people who convicted of murder have reformed themselves. And again, we have rehabilitation for young people. How come we can have the same thing for adults? And again, once you spend your time in prison and you do your time, you shouldn't be beat to death after you get out, or not given food stamps or basic necessities to support your family now that you've been somewhat out of that whole system. But it kind of really bothers me as I hear that. I've not talked about racist judges and their bias towards African-American people, and particularly men. How can we prove this without using the reverse engineering of the raw numbers in Lincoln, other prisons in Nebraska? How do you attest that judges give out different sentences to Black people longer than white people without having the data or just whatever? How can you do that? Or can we?
They doing it. But them judges, another harsh reality is like how we got those racist Caucasian cops in place. You got racist Caucasian physicians in place, and you got these racist Caucasian judges in place. They are in place everywhere you look. And
Right.
they're just upholding their system and doing what they're supposed to do. And again, because we don't understand power, nobody's going to look into this because of that fear. Well, I was just telling someone the other day, I said, with the returning citizens group that we work with, we were talking about how it takes 2 years for
Readjustment?
yeah, to be able to vote again, right? But depending on which states you are in, you might not never be able to do jury duty. You know what I'm saying? So that was just making me, that made us go into a conversation where like, we were talking about what they call that, wow, I'm having a brain freeze.
Restitution?
No, the immunity that police get.
Police immunity.
Yeah, we were talking about that. And I was telling them how like, I saw a bill saying something that they want to make sure like there's no public information that'll tell you where a police officer live or where a judge, you know,
Oh yeah, you're right. You're
but
right.
all that information about everyday people, you know, is up for grabs and stuff like that. And I said, and that's kind of like, again, we are too scared to even look at these people's track records, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because like my mom used to say that we got this convenient amnesia. You know what I'm saying? We just want to forget it and make it go away because of that fear factor.
Right.
So when these judges are doing it and having their way, and these police just having their way, we're too scared to even investigate it.
Well,
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, and I heard, I'm not trying to be funny, but I heard the number of prominent police officers who retired and so they used to beat up Black people back in the day, and it got Big Red out there who used to whoop everybody's butt in a sense. And some of these older people have not always translated to some of these young cops that are even young people in our community that they never came into any jurisdiction back in the day. They could beat you up and get away with it. And even now when stuff goes on, when you hear the chief of police say, I'll take care of it. Well, you can't take care of it when you're troops or you got relationships with them. It's like the whole thing when you got that African-American female who's been promoted so many times now, actually came on the paper says there's no sexual harassment. And every other month we see some questionable circumstances that involve the police department. So, you know, we can't be having our cake and eat it too, because if your relationship was that good with the community, you'd be out here dealing with people on a decent level and not just this silly Juneteenth, this marking slavery day. Give me a break. I want to talk about Malcolm X Day. I want to talk about what we can do to reverse some of the conditions rather than just marching down the street. Again, I know it's important to people from the South and Texas and other places. That's their business. But why would you give the police officer a day off on Juneteenth when they're going to turn around and arrest you for some petty offense that they get you in jail for because they'll make money off of you? I've been following the lack of studies and participation of real African Americans at the University Law School, criminal justice, social work, education department, you name it. Can you imagine that in this state would look like we have real brothers and sisters work for our struggle in this institution? And Yshall, the question I really want to ask you related to that is, have you ever interacted with the university on any level with all the skills you bring on organizing, voter registration, your background and understanding the prison system? Do you get invited to university or law schools or something to share on your skill set that you can share so far?
I'm gonna be honest, most things I'm invited to by other Black people. These institutions don't invite me to anything.
Oh, wow. That's sad.
Even if my own role as a community organizer, yeah.
Even community organizing class, do they have anything like that? You know, social work or any kind of thing that you're aware of? Can you go get a degree in community organizing in Nebraska? You know anything about that?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Wow, I know when I was teaching social work, it was like a taboo topic because the head honchos have suffered a level of white fragility. They're afraid to deal with people of color, particularly African Americans. I don't know if they ever hired an African American male who's family centric in the social work department in their history. They had somebody from an adjunct from South Dakota coming down, but as far as I know, a lot of these places hate Black men, especially Black men who are family centered, who talk about children and women in a positive light. We're getting down to our closing comment of the program and so on. And one of the things I always like to ask my guests to do is there anything you'd like to share with our listening audience as we close out, Yshall?
I'd ask the listening audience to go study the word power. Who had a real good take on the word power is a book I read by Amos N. Wilson. I love his take on power. Our people really need to understand power so we learn how to exercise and become powerful people. Because as long as we continue to let people have power over us, our reality is always going to be grim.
Wow.
We've got to wrestle with this word called power and empower ourselves and become the powerful people God ordained for us to be.
Thank you very much, Yshall. And again, one of the things I just want to say as we close out, that one of the things that more we're going to be doing is maybe offering book discussion, book reviews, things like that, because we know a lot of our people need to read books like that. And you're right, the more you know about power and how to exercise it, the less people can manipulate you and do stuff to you because you're powerless or you see yourself as a victim or less than. And so one of the things I always look at is the kind of plantation education we'll offer them. We have to learn how to unbrainwash ourselves or learn our own stuff by reading our own material versus just going by what somebody said to us. Because I saw the move out of Omaha and it blew my mind that you had a county prosecutor and a county pretender collaborating and keeping a young man in prison or jail or juvenile system for 6 months to try to force him to snitch on somebody. He didn't do it. And they never gave that man back his 6 months of his life, and how this system operates to point out African Americans and treat them a certain way. Even I found out recently from a 360 meeting that they will kick some of these gang members, people to the federal system so they don't get any parole. I mean, that's mean. And then when I asked a question in the meeting of 360, what about the white people? They didn't have the data, nor did they come up with it. And I would tell people, and all the time I ask questions of law enforcement, I can't remember one time that they said they wouldn't get back to me, they got back to me. And when I used to go to those meetings, I always had one of the most thought-provoking questions for the department. And like I say, some of the stuff they hide on their webpage, some of the stuff they don't produce, like Omaha Public Schools research, and some of the things Yshall, you talked about are potent and important for us to deal with. But thank you for being on the program.
You know, well, one thing I want to
power thing.
Okay, no doubt, it's my pleasure. But another thing that you made me just think about is the fact that Brother Malcolm X said this. He said, it's not that we're outnumbered, we're out-organized.
Right.
And that's the problem. If we was organized, we would know. Like, because one thing I see that I bet you don't happen to Caucasians is that when they are putting, like, when someone's on probation or something, you know, they're putting those leg monitors on people of color. And like the whole time you're on probation, you almost on this monitor. I would just bet millions of dollars Caucasians aren't on these monitors like that.
Well, it's obvious they're not there. And secondly, when I look at the probation department, look how many white people work there and how few African Americans. And in fact, I was at a meeting a while back and I saw they gave the awards to 5 white people. I'm like, hold it. Most people you deal with are African Americans and Hispanics or Latinos or Chicanos or people of color. So why are all your staff members white who've never been in a situation where they can deal with some of the realities of our experience? So yeah, we need to deal with all these systems that are just suffering from white fragility and racism and so on, and we got to call it for like it is. But again, you're right. We need to organize and control our destiny and not let these handkerchief head, Uncle Tom type and Jemimas control our community, because at the end of the day, you look some of the silliness that go on. It's just, but yeah, you're right. Let's look at probably some reading and book reviews and things like that to help.
And let me say this too. Since we mentioned Brother Walter Brooks, Trust No Shadows After Dark.
Right.
Something you just mentioned, and he's and I look at it and it says this right here. It says, mass incarceration in America became the economic lifeblood for community employment in hundreds of rural white prison towns and for major white corporate vendors and private prisons. Today, almost 25% of America's adult population has a criminal record, and criminal justice prison industrial complex spending, now exceeding $200 billion annually, is second only to U.S. military spending. And I'm saying that to say that's why so many white people are employed. This is how they make their money. You know how much employment mass incarceration provides for Caucasians? And I say that goes back to physical slavery. Everybody made their money off of us, and nothing has changed today. These rural towns didn't have no money coming in.
Tecumseh was a good example.
Yeah.
Tecumseh, Nebraska.
Yeah, private, and where they looking for the new penitentiary goes, going to be in another rural area. Ain't going to bring life to that area. These people make money off of our incarceration. Always have, and their plan is to always do so.
Well, Yshall, one of the things that I cannot be remiss is I know that some of us need to avoid going up in that fire pit as best as we can, but when we do go there, we want to see justice and fairness and equity, and that's not happening in the cottage industry where people make their living. And also, I found it surprising how much money people make by working in the prison industrial complex and law enforcement. Some of those guys don't even have college degrees, and they're making more money than the graduates who spend their time in the university. But again, what can we expect when some of our elected officials, public officials, won't speak about some of these injustices in our community? And so we have to come in outside and lifting the heavy water and lifting the heavy baggage to clean it up. But yeah, I really appreciate you being on here today, and hopefully we can have you back again to talk about some of your experiences. And again, we will hopefully have Walter Brooks talk about his book and maybe get more people to read it, because I think some of the stuff he says in his book is very much relevant to what we experience here in Omaha, and particularly Nebraska as a state, and more so in a recent year of this election year. So thanks for being on this program, and hopefully we can have you back again.
Oh, most definitely.
So you take care, and as we say, Baroko, we'll see you again.